The conference room on the 42nd floor of Aldgate Tower smells like leather and ambition. 18 board members sit around a table made of Brazilian walnut, each one dressed in a suit that costs more than most people earn in a month. At the head of the table, the CEO of Harrington Financial Services is walking through the final details of a merger worth £800 million. His voice is smooth, practiced. He talks about synergies and market positioning and shareholder value. Sarah Mitchell sits 3 chairs from the end, a leather portfolio balanced on her knees. She is 34 years old. She has not slept properly in 9 days. Her hair is pulled back tight enough to give her a headache, and her hands are folded so carefully that no one can see them shake. In exactly 4 minutes, she will destroy a man's career. But to understand how a one-penny discrepancy brought down the chief financial officer of a multinational investment firm, we have to go back 6 months. Sarah had worked at Harrington Financial for 11 years. She started as a junior accountant fresh out of university, and by the time she turned 30, she was managing a team of 6. Her colleagues described her as meticulous. Her annual reviews used words like detail-oriented and thorough. What they meant was that Sarah noticed things, small things, the kind of things most people would dismiss as irrelevant. The CFO was a man named Richard Pemberton, 53 years old, Oxford educated, a member of the Garrick Club. He had worked his way up through banking in the 90s, made a fortune during the dot-com bubble, and joined Harrington during the financial crisis when they needed someone who looked good to investors. He wore Savile Row suits and Swiss watches. He played golf with the CEO. When he walked into a room, people straightened their spines. Sarah had worked under Pemberton for 7 years without incident. She prepared reports. She filed taxes. She made sure the numbers added up, which they always did because that was her job. Then in March, she filed the Q1 earnings report. Pemberton called her into his office on a Thursday afternoon. The office was large. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Thames. There was a photograph on his desk of himself shaking hands with the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He did not ask her to sit down. "This is unacceptable," he said. He held up the report. "Your work has become sloppy, Sarah. Frankly, I'm disappointed." Sarah blinked. She had reviewed the report 3 times. "I'm sorry, but which section are you referring to?" "All of it." He dropped the report on the desk. "The reconciliations are off. The foreign exchange calculations are inconsistent. I've been covering for you, but I can't continue to do so if you're not going to meet basic professional standards." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. "The reconciliations are accurate. I can show you the source documents." "I don't have time to micromanage you," Pemberton said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to audit every single transaction for the last 5 fiscal years, every penny. You're going to document your methodology, and you're going to prove to me that you're capable of doing the job I'm paying you to do." He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than her car. "I want it on my desk in 8 weeks. If you can't handle it, I'll find someone who can." Sarah stood in his office for 3 seconds longer than necessary, long enough to notice the way he had already turned back to his computer screen, long enough to realize he had planned this conversation before she walked in, long enough to decide that she was not going to quit. "Understood," she said. She walked back to her desk on the 37th floor. She sat down. She opened her email and sent a single message to HR, documenting the conversation and requesting clarity on the scope of the audit. Then she opened Excel. 5 years of transaction data for a firm the size of Harrington Financial is approximately 4.3 million individual line items. Sarah knew this because she had pulled the raw data before she left the building that night. She loaded it onto an encrypted external drive and took it home. Her flat in Canary Wharf was small. One bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet. She had bought it in 2019, right before the pandemic, and she was still paying off the mortgage. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat down at her desk. She opened the file. The first week, she did nothing but clean the data. She standardized the date formats. She removed duplicate entries. She flagged transactions that were missing vendor information or approval signatures. It was tedious work, the kind of work most people would automate with a script. But Sarah did not trust scripts. She wanted to see every line. The second week, she started noticing patterns. Harrington Financial processed payments to roughly 2,000 vendors on a regular basis. Office supplies, IT services, consulting fees. Most of the payments were consistent, predictable. The same vendors, the same amounts, the same approval chains. But there were others, small payments, always under £5,000, always approved by Pemberton, always paid to limited liability companies with generic names. Apex Solutions Limited, Sterling Consulting Group, Meridian Advisory Services. She pulled the registration documents from Companies House. The companies were real. They had directors, they had addresses. But when she cross-referenced the addresses, she found that 12 of them shared the same registered office in a serviced building in Mayfair. That was not illegal. Lots of small companies use serviced offices. But it was interesting. She kept digging. The payments to these companies were irregular. Some months there would be 5 payments, other months none. The amounts varied, but they always ended in round numbers, exactly £4,000. Exactly £3,500. Never £4,027. Never £3,513. Sarah pulled the invoices. They were clean, professional. They listed vague services. Strategic consulting, market analysis, operational review. The invoices were always approved by Pemberton, no one else. She ran a pivot table on the total payments to these shell companies over 5 years. The number came to just under £9 million. That was when she noticed the rounding errors. In accounting, rounding errors are inevitable. When you divide currencies, when you calculate foreign exchange rates, when you apply tax percentages. The errors are tiny, a fraction of a penny. Most accounting software automatically rounds to the nearest hundredth and moves on. But Sarah had not moved on. She had kept the raw data. And when she compared the raw data to the final posted amounts in the general ledger, she found discrepancies. Always less than 1 penny per transaction. Always in transactions that involved foreign vendors. Always in the same month as payments to the shell companies. She built a model. She traced every discrepancy back to its source transaction, and she found that the rounding errors were not random. They were systematic. For every £10,000 processed through a foreign exchange transaction, approximately 0.01% was being redirected to a holding account. The holding account was listed in the ledger as a reconciliation buffer, a place to store minor discrepancies until they could be corrected, except they were never corrected. The money sat in the buffer account for exactly 30 days. Then it was transferred out in lump sums. The transfers were categorized as administrative corrections. They were approved by Pemberton, and they were sent to the same shell companies. Sarah sat back in her chair. She drank cold tea. She stared at the spreadsheet. Richard Pemberton had been stealing from Harrington Financial for at least 5 years. He had built a system that skimmed fractions of pennies from thousands of transactions, aggregated them in a buffer account, and funneled them to shell companies that he controlled. The individual thefts were so small that no auditor would ever notice, but over time they added up to millions. And he had been so confident in his system that he had accused her of sloppy work to cover his tracks. Sarah saved her work. She backed it up in 3 separate locations. And then she went to bed. The next morning, she did not go to Pemberton. She did not go to HR. She did not go to the external auditors. She waited. 2 weeks later, the CEO announced that Harrington Financial was entering merger negotiations with a German investment bank. The deal was worth £800 million. It would make Harrington one of the largest financial services firms in Europe. The board was thrilled. Pemberton was leading the due diligence team. Due diligence meant that every number in Harrington's books would be examined by the acquiring company's auditors. Every transaction, every account, every reconciliation. Sarah went back to her spreadsheet. She spent the next 4 weeks writing a report. It was 63 pages long. It included transaction logs, bank statements, company's house filings, and a full breakdown of the buffer account transfers. She documented every shell company, every rounding error, every fraudulent approval. She cross-referenced Pemberton's signature on the invoices with his signature on the company registration documents for the shell companies. They matched. She formatted the report according to the International Financial Reporting Standards. She included an executive summary. She appended the raw data in a separate file, and she sent it to exactly one person, the chairwoman of the board. Sarah sent the email on a Sunday night. She did not include a cover letter. She did not explain herself. She simply attached the report and wrote, "For your review prior to the merger vote." She received a reply at 6 o'clock Monday morning. Board meeting, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Attend. Sarah showed up to the merger vote wearing the same suit she had worn to her interview 11 years earlier. She carried a leather portfolio. Inside the portfolio was a printed copy of her report and a USB drive containing the raw data. The CEO spent 40 minutes presenting the merger. He used a slideshow. He talked about growth, about opportunity, about the future of the firm. The board members nodded. They asked questions about integration timelines and regulatory approvals. They looked pleased. Then the chairwoman cleared her throat. "Before we vote," she said, "I'd like to invite Sarah Mitchell from our accounting department to present some findings that have come to my attention." The room went silent. Pemberton was sitting 4 seats down from the CEO. Sarah watched his face. He looked confused. Not worried. Just confused. He did not know what was coming. Sarah stood up. She connected her laptop to the projector, and she began to speak. She did not editorialize, she did not accuse, she simply walked through the numbers. She showed the shell companies, she showed the buffer account, she showed the rounding errors, she showed the systematic pattern of theft over 5 years, she showed the bank transfers, she showed the matching signatures. She spoke for 11 minutes. When she finished, she unplugged her laptop and sat down. No one said anything for approximately 8 seconds. Then the CEO turned to Pemberton. "Richard," he said quietly, "would you like to respond?" Pemberton's face had gone pale. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the chairwoman. He looked at the CEO. He looked at Sarah. "This is absurd," he said. His voice was too loud. "This is a clerical error, a misunderstanding. I can explain the reconciliation procedures. This is standard practice." The chairwoman slid a printed copy of Sarah's report across the table. "This documents £9.2 million transferred to companies that you personally own," she said. "I don't think that's standard practice." Pemberton stood up. "I've dedicated 20 years to this firm. I'm not going to sit here and be accused of—" "Sit down," the CEO said. Pemberton sat down. The chairwoman looked at the rest of the board. "I'm calling for an emergency suspension of the CFO pending a full external audit. All in favor?" 18 hands went up. Pemberton was escorted from the building by security 20 minutes later. Sarah watched from her desk on the 37th floor as he walked across the plaza below, flanked by two men in dark suits. He did not look up. The external audit took 6 weeks. It confirmed everything in Sarah's report. The Serious Fraud Office opened an investigation. Pemberton was charged with fraud, theft, and money laundering. He pled guilty to avoid trial. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison and ordered to repay £11.4 million, which included interest and penalties. The merger went through. The German bank's auditors praised Harrington's internal controls. The CEO personally thanked Sarah in a company-wide email. She was promoted to interim CFO while they searched for a permanent replacement. Her salary doubled. Sarah moved to a larger flat in Shoreditch. She bought new furniture. She took a week off and went to Italy. When she came back, she found a handwritten note on her desk from the chairwoman. It said, "Thank you for caring about the pennies." Sarah kept the note, because here is the truth about power. It is not built on grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It is built on attention to detail, on knowing the rules better than the people who wrote them, on understanding that every system, no matter how complex, is made of tiny, breakable parts. Richard Pemberton thought he was untouchable because he understood finance, but he did not understand accountants. He thought meticulous meant boring. He thought detail-oriented meant unambitious. He thought that a woman who counted pennies could be bullied into silence. He was wrong, and in the end, it was not a grand conspiracy that destroyed him. It was not a whistleblower or a confession or a lucky break. It was 0.01%, 1 penny at a time.
If you enjoyed watching the system crumble, leave a like, subscribe, and share your own office war stories in the comments below. Welcome to Executive Fallout.